We are on page 81. I want to go back to the point that we mentioned before, but I think it's important. To look at what the rabbi has been trying to bring the Kuzari to. We mentioned this before. That's not what I want to speak about. The rabbi has been asking the Kuzari all kinds of questions in order to bring him to an understanding that you have to look at the origin of all things. Language has an origin. There are rules in language that exist in all languages. And therefore there must have been someone or something or some people which began the roots, the origins, the rules of modern language. Nouns, adjectives, verbs, past, present, future. In every language there's an organized system of how to understand language. The same thing is true with what else did we mention? What else? With days of
the week.
Days of the week. The days of the week, how many days are in a week?
7.
7. Why 7?
Because Hashem created the world in 6.
Well, that's why we say 7. Why everyone else has 7?
Yeah.
Because
Why aren't there
copied us.
civilizations with countries? You have countries that follow the metric system, and this country which doesn't. The only one, right? That makes our lives complicated. But you think about it for a moment, it makes sense that somewhere on this planet there would be a country that has a 10-day week, or an 8-day week, or a 9-day week, or a 3-day week. Why did everyone gravitate towards the number 7? Countries that, mind you, don't even have any connection. They're not Muslim countries or Christian countries. They don't have any connection to the Bible, so to speak. Their religion doesn't demand from them to have 7 days in the week. Even though the Christians and the Muslims and the Jews, everyone has a different ending of the week, but the days of the week are split into 7. It had to have started somewhere. Somehow. Says the rabbi to the king of Kuzari, you cannot begin to just appreciate things on face value. You have to go back and try to understand there must have been a Mekor Rishon, a first source, a first cause for why these things happen. There must have been someone who taught his son the day of the week. There are 7 days in a week, not 8 days, not 6 days. There are 7 days in a week. What else did the rabbi bring to the king of Kuzari? What else? What other thing of this style, this genre? The decimal system.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me what I mean about the decimal system.
Everything's based on a unit of 10.
Everything in the world is based off of 10. 10, 20, 30, 40, 60. You end with 100. 100, 200, 300, 400, 1,000, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. And then you move up into the tens of thousands, into the millions, the billions, the trillions, to wherever you want to stop. Why is the world made up of 10 digits? Why don't you find civilizations that have 9 digits, 8 digits? Everything is broken up into 8, 8 to 16, so on and so forth. Or 5. 5 is also just a half of 10. Why is everyone running on the 10 system? Now we know in Judaism, the 10 Commandments, the 10 Ma'amarot, that Hashem created the world, and so on and so forth. You have in Kabbalah the 10 Sfirot, the 10 different worlds. But why did the rest of the world gravitate towards the number 10? So let's see what the Kuzari answers to the rabbi on page 80 at the bottom. The Kuzari said, you are right. The only way that this could occur is by all nations getting together at some point and agreeing upon it. But this is too far-fetched, unless we say that at some point in history, all people descended from one person, either Adam or Noah or someone else, so that all people acquired their knowledge of a week from the same parents. It makes sense, you go to a family and everyone in the same family has the same tradition. But when you go to someone else's family and they have the same tradition as you, suddenly you're like, whoa, maybe we're related to each other. Why do you assume you're related? Because if you're doing something that's so random for why you would do that, then it must mean that we have some kind of connection. Says the rabbi to the Kuzari, don't let those philosophers teach you that the world existed forever and ever and ever and nothing ever. There must have been a first point in time. There must have been somebody, call him whoever you want. At this point in time, the rabbi is not here to prove the Torah. As much as he is, just agree with me on the fact that
They all came from one source.
they all came from somewhere. It could be Adam, it could be Noah, it could be someone else, whoever, whatever you want to call that person. But they must have started somewhere. somewhere at a point in time where everyone agreed on something. And if that's true, then you have to start shaking up what it is that you believe in. You can't believe the world always existed. It can't be. It can't be. So let's keep going. Top of page 81. Amar Chaver, says the rabbi, Ze ratziti lishma. This is what I wanted to hear. V'chen minyan ha'asara is the number of 10. הסכים כל אדם עליו מזרח מערב, וזה טבע הביא לעמוד בעשרה, אלא שהוא מקובל כמתחיל בו. He mentioned this number 10. Why else would somebody agree, this is 59 on page 81, why would everyone gravitate towards the number 10 if it wasn't that at some point in time they learned from their parents, from their family, from someone, that everything in the world is broken up into 10? What do you guys think about this?
10 fingers to yourself.
Right, that's all you could count, right? Some people could use their toes.
Yeah.
That's hard with socks on.
It's true.
What do you think about this argument of the rabbi? That's what you think?
I think it's a great argument, actually, because it's true. I mean, if it started from the source and everybody follows it, and if they have questioned that there was another world before, then what happened to the things from the other world? Why they didn't come forth?
Right. And we mentioned, by the way, Zariel, you weren't here, we mentioned them, we were speaking about the weeks, that there were cultures in Rome, for example, where they had 5-day weeks. There was such a culture, and those disappeared. Huh? They tried it, and it didn't work out for them. So I'm not saying that you'll never find in history that there wasn't a person who tried to have, like today, not so long ago in this country, there was somebody who tried to push Congress to start a 28-hour day. For reasons to do with minimum wage and all kinds of things like that. They wanted to extend the hours of the day. Why not, technically?
Our day.
That's what they wanted.
Weird.
Someone said it was probably a lawyer who was trying to make more money off of people. He wanted more hours to work in the day. Yeah, but there could be such a thing, technically, but it doesn't work. People try these things, and it doesn't work out for them. The world gravitates to 7 days in a week, 10 digits. Languages have the same build-up. Every language you go to has the same past, present, future, verbs, nouns, adjectives, adverbs. There's a system in languages. Everything in the world comes down to some point. And I think that this is a profound teaching that we don't speak about so much in Judaism. Yeah?
But you could also say, really, that, hypothetically, that there were a number of different systems, and one seemed to work best, and there was pressure in all the other civilizations to conform to it because, commerce, etc., doesn't work well if you're under different systems.
Okay, but why?
Why? I don't know why. You're saying...
Well, why did they give it
But
up?
even more so, that just proves that there was some connection at a certain point in time with all those civilizations. You're right.
They were all
It means,
connected. Well,
but which is not true though, because you have early civilizations in America developing in South Africa, and they've all gravitated to the same thing. So
Meaning when the colonists came to the United States and found the Native American tribes, why were they doing some of these things?
I don't know what they were...
Where did they come from?
I don't know. I don't know
There must have... So where is this taking us? The rabbi's taking it to the place of... So we have a reason for this. We're not puzzled by the fact that but you who don't believe in Adam or Noah or the beginning of creation, so you're going to have a problem explaining to people why this is the standard in the world.
Yeah.
You're going to have that problem. Now, I think this is something we don't elaborate enough in Judaism at this point. My rabbi always calls it hapashtut, the most simple thing, hu ha'emet. It's the truth. People try to overcomplicate things. Albert Einstein once said, if you can't explain a complicated matter very simply, then you simply don't understand it. If you can't explain a complicated matter simply, you just don't understand it. It's the truth. Sometimes you go places and hear people that they're talking because they don't know what they're saying. Of course they're going to talk so much. Someone who knows what he's saying. Rashi says in 3 words what it takes other commentaries 3 paragraphs to say. It's something about being brief, concise, knowing that the truth is with you. We have to, isolate the world to the most simple facts of reality. We speak to people about Judaism. We speak to them about Hashem, about the Torah, about Har Sinai, about miracles, about Moshe. Says the rabbi, why don't you speak to them about how many days there are in a week?
So simple.
It's so simple that we don't even think about it. Why don't you speak to people about the fact that we have rules in language, all languages, even the most cryptic civilizations and the most ancient groups of people, they had rules to their language. Why don't we speak to people about the number 10? Why not? Why do we always complicate them with other things? The answer is because it's human nature to overlook the simple things. Human nature. We think, that poster, all I need to know I learned in kindergarten, that's a famous poster, and all these things, to share your toys, not to fight, not to this, not to... So if we only listened to the rules we were taught in kindergarten, the world would look like a better place. And the same is true with life, the same is true with Judaism. If only we took things back to the most simple form, to the most basic, elementary context in which it was in, you would come out with a lot more truth. For example, we do this a lot in halakha. People don't like it, but we do it in halakha. When we want to decide what is the proper approach to halakha, what is improper, what do you follow, what do you not follow, what do you do? So now I'm living in 2014, and there seems to be a three-way argument about what, for example, you can eat on Pesach. Let's say, yeah, it's the topic of the month. Yeah. So what do you do? What do you do?
Follow Yemenite.
Follow the Yemenites.
Okay.
Complicated even more.
Enjoy life.
No, so you have a three-way argument.
I like that.
So how do you solve? You're not solving the argument. Doesn't mean to get everyone else to do what you want them to do. Just you want to come to the appreciation of everyone can do what they want to do anyways. But what was the original Jewish teaching? So you have to look it up in the sources. You look in the Shulchan Aruch, and you'll find that the three-way argument became a two-way argument. And you look back a little bit farther, and you'll see it's still a two-way argument. You look back a little bit farther, and you'll find that in the times of the Rishonim, the argument didn't exist because there was only one opinion.
Yeah.
And therefore, what have you just reached?
The
The
halacha.
most simple source in Jewish literature. There's one opinion. There's one opinion? Okay. So I'm not going to oversimplify the halachic process to say, so I found the one opinion, I'm going to throw out everyone else's opinions. But I found one opinion. At least those people who follow this opinion can rest assured that what?
It's accurate.
That it's accurate. That this is their most simple truth. Someone once asked my rabbi, so what should I be? Sephardi, Ashkenazi, Lubavitch, Hasidic, Kalbach. What should I be?
You didn't have that back in the time of the
Didn't have
temple.
it.
Very nice. Says my rabbi, let's you're bringing it to me, what do we agree on? We agree. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov says you're supposed to pray in the field and scream your heart out. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe said you should never go outside to pray, it's not what we do, we're not Breslovers. And the Sfaradim don't even know why you're leaving the Bet Knesset, you should only pray in the Bet Knesset. But there, you have a number, no, you have different approaches. Says my rabbi, stop looking at the world from here backwards. Look at the world from there forwards. He says, what do we agree on? What do we agree on? Do we all agree that Hashem is God? Yeah. Do we agree on the Tanakh being divine? Yeah. Do we believe in the authenticity of the Mishnah, the Talmud? Yeah. Do we all agree that the Rambam's writings are at least the source, the earliest source of Jewish halakha? Yeah. Do we all agree that the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah together make up the last body of Jewish halakha that we all agreed on? Yes. When did things start to split off? About 600 years ago. So throw out the last 600 years. You at least believe in Hashem, learn Tanakh, learn the Mishnah and the Talmud, learn the Rambam, the Shulchan Aruch, the Ramah, and trust me, you'll be a pretty good Jew. You don't have to now further categorize yourself into any other group. Just be Jewish. Go back to the last point in time where Jews seem to agree on something. That's the simplest truth in the world. It's not whose rabbi is greater and whose one can walk on water and who. It doesn't make a difference. You could do all the miracles in the world. When I want to figure out the truth, I go back to the most simple fact in the world. How many days are there in the week? How many decimals there are in the decimal system? So on and so forth. And I think if we begin to look at Judaism that way, the world that way, a lot of the craziness, the things that people get perplexed about, they don't even come up. They don't come up because when you look at the world in a very simple fashion, other people will say about you that you're simple-minded, that you're a tamim, you're a... Well, I know the words they call you. So what? It's better to be following the truth. Yeah.
What was the first language? You said language has rules. What was the first language?
Hebrew. Ivrit.
So Adam spoke Ivrit.
Ivrit. Adam created Ivrit.
Adam created it.
Well, not, Hashem created the world in Ivrit,
So then all the other languages follow the rules of the
Hebrew language. Not all the rules, meaning there are rules that you'll find in the Hebrew you don't find in
Which
other
is
languages.
different.
But the basic, meaning we're not here to prove what the first language was Hebrew. We're here to prove is that all languages have a past, present, and future. Why? Why does it have to be that way? All languages have feminine and masculine. Why? Why does it have to be that way? Why?
English doesn't really.
English in certain areas doesn't have, but in other areas, she, he, him, her.
Yeah,
There's right. So how far does it go? Okay, that's fine. But why does there have to be a split up in a language between males and females?
But you could say that man was created
Because
with
humans are
an
split up
innate.
into males and females.
Okay, but why does that dictate for me to have a different word for things?
You could say that man was born with an innate brain capacity to learn language, and that language would be would have certain structure and depends on the environment in which the child is brought up. I mean, there is.
Yeah, and I agree, but that had to have come from somewhere.
Oh, it came.
All the people
from
in the
Hashem.
world agreed on the rules of language?
Well, each language has its own rules.
No,
the
but they
format
all
is
have
similar.
common rules.
Come on.
Similar.
And they're
Basically, it's
no,
the
no,
same.
common rules.
Okay.
Verbs, nouns,
Okay, those-
adjectives, adverbs, suffixes, prefixes. These are all the languages have these rules.
But you could say that all comes from Hashem, and it all comes from Hashem to people. I mean,
I don't
agree
need to
with
prove right now that it's divine. All I'm trying to prove is that it comes from somewhere, from wherever you want it to come from. But don't pretend to me that it's always existed. It has to have started somewhere.
Yeah.
Or you can't assume that people in Africa would come up. Oh, we're going to start speaking today, and they're going to make up languages that follow the same rules as the people in the Americas. It can't be, unless you have a very complicated explanation for it. But the simplest form is to say there must have been a time where people were together. I mean, this so baffled scientists. The scientists even have theories about continents being pressed together and then splitting apart, and ice bridges. You all know these theories of scientists because they're baffled at the way the world works. It's not just that we made a problem. The world knows that there's a problem with some of the norms that exist in the world, and therefore they have to give other answers for it. We don't. These are our
Potential
answers.
answers, yeah.
Right.
Which is all theory is a potential answer.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So continuing forward, I mean, I'm not discrediting. I understand every language has different rules. There are words that French and English and Hebrew don't all follow the same rules, but they have generic things that we all agree upon.
Well, more than that, they have rules. I think what Marlene is saying that innately human beings are born with the ability to speak, but I don't know that they're necessarily born with the ability to develop similar languages. All of them. That would be very interesting because then where did that come from? That's a
They're born
question.
with the aptitude to learn whatever language they are exposed to during the
But-
first months of
Where
But
did
somehow
that
all
come
those
from?
languages that they're exposed to are very similar in their makeup. So that's the question.
Yeah.
All, those words are all.
I don't know about sign language. I don't know about the Japanese and Chinese. I just don't know. I understand what you're saying. I'm just like, he's using this to prove a point, and it just doesn't exactly resonate with me. That he's
Okay, no, I appreciate that. That's fine. That's okay. There was something I wanted to say. What was I saying right before this?
The decimal.
No, right before you asked your question.
You're talking
Scientists.
about. Okay, sorry. Talking about languages, and they all have similar properties, and male and female, and.
Okay, Hashem.
Simplicity.
Baruch Hashem. Simplicity. It's a good thing. I was going to, for example, the word, anyone here a sailor, ever been in a boat, ever was in the Navy? Did you ever spend time in the water?
A little sailing.
A little sailing.
Very little.
What's the common term? This is me, this is not the Kuzari. What's the common tense that you refer to a boat? Is it male or female?
She.
Female.
She. It's always the boat. She is so beautiful. She is so great. She's... Why? What part of boat is female?
None. I don't know why they. Yeah, that's a good question.
Right, why? Why is something else
'Cause
masculine?
some men are married to their boats.
And some
But it's in quite a few languages that it's like that. It's not just
not
in
just
English.
not just in
Exactly,
English.
right.
And
So-
for hundreds of years, all the shipmates on the ship were men. Only recently, in very recent history,
Or
were
ladies.
women allowed on ships.
Well, let's
other
look
than
at
as passengers.
let's look into the language of creation. What are the three Hebrew words for boat? Do you know? Boat, ship.
Ship,
Tevel.
vessel,
Yeah.
Onia, that's feminine.
Sfina.
Sfina, that's feminine.
vessel.
One more.
So what was it called?
Sira,
Sira.
Oh, what,
that's feminine.
what about
And they're all
those?
And therefore, Sfinot, Sirot, and Oniot. All the words in Hebrew for boat are in feminine.
Really?
And it makes sense that the world developed this understanding that boats are feminine. Even though in the current language they speak, they don't know why. But that's what it is. That's what it is. Just something to think about.
But they had to have come to a consensus to give
Somewhere.
it a feminine name.
Right.
Yeah.
And why is that? I don't. Oh, they have to give you a reason. I know why it's that way. Because the world originally spoke Hebrew.
But it's in English as well. It's
Well-
feminine it's
But the word boat in English isn't feminine or masculine.
Yeah.
and in Hebrew. It
Onia,
is.
it has to be feminine, only feminine. If you say oniim or sirim,
it's
sirim
onia.
means pots, not boats.
So this rule is only in Hebrew? Is that what you're saying?
Meaning the origin of why potentially could come from the fact that it's in the Hebrew language that way.
Yeah.
Something to think about.
Inadvertently, the
Something to think
language
about.
was influenced by the original Hebrew.
So let's keep going. Amar Kuzari, says the Kuzari, Ve'ech and how lo yifgom alecha emunatcha, how could your belief, your emunah, not be tainted or undermined? Zot ma sheomrim al anshe Hodu, what they say about the people of India. In India, they have history books of their own. Kiyesh, remember what we once spoke about India before here. Do you remember in the Kuzari we mentioned India?
Philosopher?
Remember why we, what?
Was it the philosopher?
Not the philosopher. Imagine what if there was a king from India who did good for you, did bad for you. Do you remember what I'm talking
Yeah,
about?
yeah.
Yeah?
It was,
At the beginning. Yeah.
yeah, it was much closer, yeah. I remember the-
Here, on page 69. Or 68. See the bottom of 68? The king of India, the top of 69, Indian messengers. What is so wondrous about the Indians? Why India? Why does this keep coming up?
Because nobody was there, it's just so far away, they
You're talking about a time in the world where India was not explored yet, was not conquered yet, was not reached yet. People heard very few things about India. They had all kinds of legends about India, all kinds of stories about the people of India, where India was. They didn't even know on the map yet. Columbus reaches America, thinks
Far
he's
away
in
land.
India. It's a faraway place. Yeah, and he's bringing it up again. What about Indian history? I mean, these are people that are not connected to your world. Doesn't their history undermine what it is that you're speaking about? Which part of their history? He says, Kiyesh mekomot etzlam, they have places by them, uvinyanim, and buildings or structures, uvarur etzlam, and they have recorded in their places, Kiyesh lehem meot alfei shana, that they are hundreds of thousands of years old, way before your creation. Way before your creation. What's he trying to do right now with the story of India?
No, supposedly they were there before Judaism. Before the Jews.
Right, so supposedly, he says, these Indians, they also have a tradition, and it goes way back, and their tradition directly contradicts your tradition.
Yeah.
They claim hundreds of thousands of years. Hundreds of thousands of years. Now, to understand the king's answer, you have to not be offended. He's not speaking about modern-day Indians. He's speaking about his culture of then, where they were living. And I think this is something that we're far removed from because we don't study Indian culture so much in our world and our planet. I have a number of recordings as to what he means here, but they're useless to us because... Okay. Says the rabbi, Amar Chaver, Haya ze mafgim al emunati, it would undermine my argument, ilu nimtza ze bemunah muchzeket, if they would have this in a if it came from someone that was completely trustworthy. Or besefer, or there was a book, shemaskimim alav hakol, that everyone would agree on, mibli machloket b'minyan yadua, when they never argued on the amount of time that the world was created. But by the Indians, you won't find that everyone agrees on one thing. Do you know that in India, what language Indians speak to each other?
It depends on what part of India you're in.
What part of India?
I think I have several. No?
What language do they speak in India?
Hindi. What they speak?
I know they try to make it a
English.
national language, but not,
They tried to make a national language. Why?
because one person from one part can't talk to another.
They are. Imagine that, like the United States, if every state had its own language because they were their own people with their own culture and their own religion and their own history. Every region of India has its own language, its own dialects that you can't understand. It's not English like British English, American English, Australian English, South African English. Completely different. So I know a few people from India. I have a friend of mine is a professor in India. I asked him, why do you have such a good English? That's the language that we speak in India.
Oh.
I said, why do you speak English in India? So obviously when the British were occupying India, it became convenient to speak English. He said, but even Indians, when they come to America, I said, it's funny, like, why do Indians in America speak to each other in English? You think, like two Israelis meet each other, they're not going to speak to each other in English. They'll feel very clumsy speaking to each other in English. That's right. I take two Israelis who speak Hebrew, say, I want you to speak to each other in English. They both speak English, but they will not speak to each other in English. You won't be able to do it for more than 30 seconds. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. It feels very awkward. If two people who speak Spanish, and they would speak to each other in Spanish. It doesn't make sense. They would speak to each other in English. So why?
Extremely American.
Unless they're extremely, it's true. Unless they're extremely American, and English is just as fluent of a language for them as the Spanish. As the Spanish. I mean, in my house, it was normal to speak to my parents in Hebrew, my brothers in English. We only spoke Hebrew to each other, and we didn't want the kids in school to understand what we were saying. Right? That was when we spoke Hebrew to each other, because our fluency was equal in both languages. In India, they speak English because they don't understand each other. They don't understand each other. And therefore, they all speak English. And Indians are very, very good at English. They have a very good written
And you
English.
can tell it's the King's English rather than American English.
Right? It's not American English. It's true. It's true. And I've been fascinated by Indian immigrants who write a very beautiful English, very eloquent English. Speaking is an accent, but writing is unbelievable. I wish the literacy of this country was that high. Yeah. They say that in San Diego, 46% of public school 8th graders read English on an 8th grade level.
Yeah.
They just put the city of San Diego put this out last week.
On a 5th grade level. 8th graders reading on the 5th level.
No, how many 8th graders are reading on an 8th grade level?
Oh, yeah?
46%. 46%.
It's improved.
And you're talking about San Diego is a pretty intellectual, intelligent, middle to upper class city. You're not talking here about slums and
Not
cultures,
talking about Detroit.
right? Yeah, exactly. You're not talking about other places where people don't even know how to read.
Yeah.
People don't even know how to read. So it's an interesting thing. That in India they speak English because they don't even agree on it. They don't agree on anything. My friend who was a professor told me he's a Christian. He said, you would hate India. I said, why? He said, because you're Jewish. I said, okay. He's like, you don't understand. He's like, when we were born, when a child is born, he creates his own God.
What?
And I don't understand what this means. Clearly their definition of God is very different than our definition of God. But they call it a God. It's the mistake when we translate Hashem into God. Which is Hashem, they have gods. Jews don't believe in God, Jews believe in Hashem, right? So what he says, every family has a God, but every child has a sub-God.
Oh.
And when he's born, we have a breed, so the parents create for him a God. And he spends his life worshipping this God, and when he has children, so this is the family God, but they have their own gods, and so on and so forth. Says the rabbi, you're talking about a people that don't agree on anything. On anything. Not language, not history, not culture, nothing. He says, how can you bring proof to me from people who don't agree on anything? He said, they themselves argue with themselves. So you're going to bring them as a disproof to me? You're going to bring them as a disproof to me? He says, Ach hem uma mufkeret. They are a wayward people. Ve'en etzlam davar barur. They have nothing that they clearly agree on. Ve'hem machisim et anshe hatorot b'kmo elu advarim. And they very much ridicule anyone who believes in any kind of Torah, any kind of divine religion, because they, in their essence, don't believe that there is such a thing as one divine truth. It can't be by them. כאשר הם מכיסים אותם בצלמיהם ואליליהם ותחבולותם, he said, and they ridicule them with their gods and their idols and all their שטויות, ואומרים, and they say, כי הם מועילים להם, ובוזים למי שאומר, כי יש אצלו ספר מאת האלוהים, and anyone who has any kind of God or book, divine book, they mock. וחיבור בזה ספרים מעטים, חיברו מיחידים מבני אדם. And as far as their tradition, they have a few books that were written by human beings. And those were only written by a few individuals, meaning it's not like everyone agreed on this book and he was writing in the name of the people. נפתה בהם מי שדעתו קלה, and only those who were feeble-minded were accepted them as truth. כי קצת ספרי החוברים שכותבים בהם ענייני 10,000 שנים. Some say that the world events go back 10,000 of years. או כמו ספרי העבודה הנבטית, like the Nabatean book of agriculture. Let's see the footnote. See the Moreh Nevuchim, where the Rambam discusses this particular work. He says that it had been translated into Arabic and was very popular. It is a book on the occult, superstition, and idol worship. And it's called the Book of Agriculture because the Nabateans believed that the only way to successfully work the soil was to first appease the celestial gods, the sun and the stars. The Nabateans were a Semitic people who lived in the ancient territory of Edom in Transjordan. Their recorded history begins as early as the 4th century, and they faded out of history with the advent of Islam. It says shezochrim sham, they mention there the names at Shemot, Yanbushar, V'tzagrit, Veroani. These are names. V'amru ki hem hayu kodem Adam, and they claim that these people lived before Adam. V'sheyanbushar haya rabo shel Adam Rishon, and that Yanbushar was Adam's rabbi, his teacher. V'adome lezeh, and similar such claims. So the rabbi, I don't understand. We know Adam to be Adam Harishon. And suddenly these guys have books of history where some of them claim they even know the name of the teacher of Adam. How could there be a teacher of Adam if Adam is the first man? Where did Yan Bushar come from? So you're talking about, you bring to me for a different religion, you want to speak to me about the Christians, about the Muslims, so, but don't bring proofs against something from the people of India. The people of India have no central tradition that they all agree on. No central tradition they all agree on. It's still true. It's nothing changed. In India, what happened? The other religions, other people colonized and brought in different ideas, but the generic religions that float around India are very loose. They're undocumented. There's no literature that goes along with them. They're very cryptic, very old, very vague.
Isn't it most of the Indians are Hindus? I think,
Yeah, but Hindus is not such a simple term. What Hindu means? Let's say that Hindu is a glorified term for a very loose collection of pagans.
Yeah, I heard one rabbi was saying it's like Avraham without the Aleph.
I don't know what that means. Shalom.
Ram,
What?
like
Okay, fine.
Ram,
Interesting.
It's like
So what happens is that the rabbi says, don't bring me proofs or disproofs. He says, don't bring me disproofs from the people of India. You want to bring from somewhere else, so bring me from somewhere else. But don't argue with me about the people of India. They're not going to help me. Next week we're going to discuss about the philosophers, because to take the next piece is powerful. And what the rabbi is going to say about Greek philosophers, you might have to hold on to your seats, because he's going to say some things that are not politically correct, but they're correct. They're just not politically correct. I wanted to bring back a point where we mentioned before why the rabbi was so easy to throw out this notion. If you remember about the people of the world, the Rambam, the rabbi's biggest struggle with the people of India, with the world being tens of thousands of years old, hundreds of thousands of years old. I mentioned this to you before, and I want to mention it to you again because it's a good note to end up on. If I believe the world is 1 million years old, as a person, what is my influence on the world? How long? Who do I know from before me? How many generations back do I know?
Great-grandfather?
Maybe some people, I don't know my great-grandfather. I didn't even meet one of my grandfathers. Maybe we go far back like our grandfathers.
Yeah.
And we know ourselves, our wives, our friends, and maybe our children. That's great. That's wonderful. But how many years is that? Let's say the span from grandparents to grandchildren. from great-grandparents to great-grandchildren? Maybe 100.
Maybe 100.
Let's give it even.
I remember my great-grandpa.
Let's give it even 150 years. 150 years. Now let's say the world is a million years old. So what is my influence on the world? What is 150 out of a million?
Nothing.
Useless. I'm useless. My life is useless. My goals are useless. My dreams of changing the world are useless. What if I'm 150 years out of a 6,000-year world?
It's a little more
A
significant.
little bit, yeah.
A lot, not a little bit. A lot more significant. A lot more significant. My life is much more significant. Says the rabbi, I refuse to let you buy into an ideology that tells you that you are nothing but dust in the wind. Why is that a good ideology to believe in? If you believe in such a thing, that means that in essence your life is useless. Don't even try to change the world because you don't have a chance. You're 150 years out of eternity. Don't even think that your grandparents brought you anything useful, because how far back do they go? 1,000 years? 1,000 years out of a million years is useless. So what do you have really? What do you have really? You have a 150-year window? Out of a million? You're nothing. But, says the rabbi, if you believe in Yahadut, you believe in Judaism, you have to understand what you are. You are a person, you're 150 years out of a few thousand. Your stamp on this world, the impression you leave on this world, is very long-lasting. Very long-lasting. And they did. And it's true. We still learn today things from 400, 500, 600, 1,000, 2,000. Nobody's reading books that were written a million years ago. Right?
I mean, we have nothing.
And therefore, the rabbi said, I don't want to let you buy into such an ideology. Forget Judaism. Forget Hashem. Forget anything. I can't let you believe in a world that tells you that you're nothing. Because then you're, forget a religious human being, but you're going to come out a hurt human being, a depressed human being, a sad human being, a human being who has no past, a human being who has no present, because a human being who doesn't have a future doesn't have a present. And a human being who doesn't have a past doesn't have a present either. It says the rabbi, we have to transform this notion of the world. You cannot let the world keep believing in a world where they're nothing. They're nothing. Rather, we believe that we're something. When a Jew wakes up in the morning, what's the first thing a Jew says?
Thank you, Hashem.
Modeh ani lefanech. Hashem, thank you for putting me back in the world. You put me back in the world because I can help people. You put me back in the world because what I do to perfect the world, to better the world, is actually worth something. And that's what we strive for. That's where we want to reach. That's where we want to go. B'ezrat Hashem, we should keep working hard and making the world a better place. We'll continue next week with Greek philosophy, God willing.